We're back with another episode of Accounting Conversations. I am so excited today to be joined by Blake Carroll. He is a deployment consultant at PwC. Blake, I'm so excited to have you here. We've connected a little bit on LinkedIn and been messaging for a couple of months now, so finally excited to meet here, not in person, but here virtually and get to know you better.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I know we've interacted a lot with each other's posts and content and everything, and yeah, it's always good to see a face beyond just the LinkedIn profile picture. So yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, you're in such a special situation. You have over 23,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is crazy impressive. That's amazing. And not only do you work at PwC in their as a deployment consultant, but you post daily helping students prepare for the CPA exam and giving them tips on how to best be prepared for that. How did you start posting on LinkedIn? Why did you want to start doing that?
Yeah, so it's actually it's funny timing with the question because I realized recently it's been about like 4 years since I've been consistently posting. And it actually started around the time when COVID was at its worst, like in early 2020. And so I think that was part of the reason that drove me to start posting is just like being at home, like everything moving virtual, and like had more time on my hands. Um, and I had always been a big student of like podcasts, particularly like personal development podcasts, since probably 2017. Because when I got my master's of accounting, I lived at home and drove to campus, and it was over an hour round trip every day. So to fill the time,
Wow.
just started getting into podcasts and listening to them, and so getting to hear all these stories about people who had used the internet just like through various platforms to build an audience and find people. And kind of the quote that kind of captures it to me is like you're best equipped to be to serve the person you used to be. And so I just kind of got thinking about people are able to like create audiences around like the most obscure things, just like if they've been through them, like whatever they dealt with. And so I was like, okay, what is something I could talk about? I had my CPA license, like I passed all the exams before I started work. I'd been in public accounting for a couple of years. So it was like, hey, and maybe I can take a lot of what I am learning through all these podcasts and all this content I'm consuming and apply it specifically to the CPA exam and to like public accounting in general. But the exam is really where I've leaned into like the topic I've really leaned into. So that's kind of how it started is just, I've gotten more consistent over time. Like when I started, it wasn't every day, but just thinking through different because I consume a lot. I listen to there's tons and tons of podcasts. There's kind of always something playing in the background, and so just constantly putting things through that filter of how can I take what I'm learning here and apply it to the CPA exam. And so just slowly building up over time. It's just like anything else that you practice, anything else you do for 4 years, you'll probably improve at it and get better at it. So I've just gotten more of a feel for like what type of posts resonate with people, what topics resonate with people. And then I've had not just posting, but having a lot of conversations, like people reaching out with questions, helping people at my firm, people who went to the college I went to, just really trying to get to know like the audience and just like what problems and issues people have. And so I think just over time, it's kind of enabled me to sort of like figure out like who the audience is and like what questions they have, what problems they have, and like how I can kind of lean into it because it's crazy because it has been 7 years now since I took the exam, but I think a lot of the principles are kind of timeless, and the great thing is like by connecting with so many people who are going through it now, you're still able to kind of learn like what's even though things have changed and the formats changed and everything, a lot of the ideas for how to tackle it still apply.
100%. That your content is just so like I've even been able to take some of your posts and not even just apply them to the CPA exam, but apply them directly to my life because it seems like all the habits that would make you successful on the CPA exam also just make you a successful and good person. And I love that about your posts and about your content, and it's amazing that you're taking everything you're learning, from podcasts and books and in your personal life and able to channel it to CPA practice and preparing for the exam. That's such a good life lesson in general that all of us can take. We can take anything in our lives and be able to apply it directly to what we're working on right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I
Oh,
was talking to someone who works for PwC the other day who they're a half marathon runner and they're training for a marathon for the first time. But it was I even told them like I love getting to talk to you about it because so many of the ideas for if you want to create like when he created his running habit, it's the exact same thing with studying for the exam, like in terms of like how you build a routine and like how you build an identity around what you do every day, and then pushing through obstacles, right? Like a lot of the stuff, whether it's running, like a lot of anything like physical activity or exercise is great, a great space for that too. And then like you said, even with like how you work, like a lot of the principles around like how to focus and how to manage your time, it works with work and with school and exams and everything like that. So yeah, it's fun to, so that's why it's cool. Like the CPA exam can kind of be like my way to like establish the audience, but then it's like, hey, this then you can kind of broaden it to like even after people pass the exam, a lot of this stuff can like help you hopefully be successful in your career as well, whether it's accounting or eventually goes into something else too.
yeah, I love that. That's 100%. We can all do that better. Um, so let's backtrack a little bit. Do you want to give us a little career overview? So maybe start out with why you chose to study accounting and then kind of go through your career up to the CPA exam and then what you've been able to do at PwC since.
Yeah, for sure. So I went to UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina, born and raised in North Carolina. I think I'm like one of 9 people in my family who went to UNC, so big Tar Heel family.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's been an exciting basketball season so far. But so going into undergrad, I knew I wanted to do business, but I didn't really know what kind of business. But it was just like, okay, this, you know, a lot of I think I try to filter a lot of decisions around like what's going to give me the most options moving forward. So of course, like with a business degree, that could give you that, especially too, because I mean, even so, this was 12 years ago. So I think it was a little bit different. Like I feel like nowadays people kind of sometimes might question going into business if you don't know what you want to do. But back then, it
Yeah.
definitely made a lot of sense back then. But I think too, if you don't really know what you want to do, it's good to figure out what you don't want to do. Um, so going into business school, I feel like finance is the first thing people think about, or finance if you want to be fancy, depending on whichever way you say it. But so it's like investment banking, that type of thing. And I think I figured out pretty early that wasn't for me. Like I never really wanted to go like to a New York, or a lot of people from my school would go to Atlanta, like a big city working. That just wasn't not my type of thing. And I did have one internship that kind of dealt in the crossover of marketing and finance, and didn't like that. Um, so after finance, and knowing that finance and marketing were kind of out, just kind of like, hey, accounting was kind of the next big thing and the next most popular major. So started exploring that and had an internship in audit, internal audit, for a company in Charlotte, North Carolina. Didn't really like that. So you try enough things that you don't want to do, and eventually you figure out what you do want to do. Had an internship in tax, with Deloitte in Charlotte, and was like, okay, like this seems to be the best fit so far. So then that led to me entering the Masters of Accounting program at UNC right after undergrad. So that's like, a 1 year program. So did that, passed 2 sections of the CPA exam while I was in school, and the other 2 in the summer before I started work. So started with a PwC in the fall of 2017. Still live in North Carolina. Like I met my wife senior year at Chapel Hill, so
Okay.
we still live with our 2 dogs in the area. But yeah, so that was the path to accounting. It was, if you don't know what you want to do, just try a bunch of different stuff, and you'll kind of get a feel for whether you do or don't like it. And then of course too, with the caveat that like even if you graduate and you don't know what you want to do, it's like you're so, I mean, you don't, I know there's a lot of pressure on people in school where it should feel like you need to have your whole path mapped out, but it's good to have the plan written in pencil, not pen, because it's going to change for sure. So even if you graduate and you're still trying new things, I think that's still a good place to be at.
I love that you tried so many different things. I mean, looking at your LinkedIn profile, you did, I don't know, it must have been 5 or 6 internships while you were in school. And I think, just like you said, you try enough things that you don't like and you finally find what you do like. That's why it's so critical for students to get out there and get to internships and get to experience early. So, why did you choose PwC, and what's your career path been since then? Because you did a tax internship at Deloitte. How come Deloitte didn't steal your heart?
Yeah, so this is actually, I think this is, it's I think there's some life lessons here. So, of course, when you intern with an accounting firm, it's typically like assumed that that is where you're going to start full time. Like it's, I wonder the percentage of people who intern with a firm and end up starting full time with that firm the following year is probably very high. I can't, you know, probably the vast majority. So that internship was in Charlotte because when I accepted it, I thought I wanted to be in Charlotte after graduating from school. But then in the interim period between taking that internship and graduating, I met Emily, who's now my wife, and we were the same age. But she was starting work after undergrad, and she had accepted a job in still the Raleigh area. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to be in Charlotte. I want to be in Raleigh. And I so communicated that to Deloitte, but then that, not Charlotte, but Raleigh. And then I actually was not given a full time offer in the Raleigh office. So that is why I didn't end up with Deloitte full time, is because it wasn't that, I mean, I enjoyed the internship, but then the Raleigh office was a lot smaller, especially compared to Charlotte. Like there weren't as many positions and things just didn't work out. So I actually had to go back through recruiting when in the fall in the way the timeline works, just like visiting with all the firms and interviewing and everything like that. But it's interesting looking back at that time period now, because for years after that, when because of course people ask that question a lot, and I would just say like, oh, since I switched my location from Charlotte to Raleigh, I just wanted to go back through recruiting and get to like see what the firms had to offer in Raleigh. But that was kind of a half truth because I left out the part where I wasn't given a full time offer. Because there was a lot of shame around that, because and then even for like even after starting with PwC, whenever we had interns start with the firm, everybody would always tell them like, oh, like don't worry about it, you're going to get an offer, like don't stress. Like everybody gets one. People would say like you really have to screw up to not get a full time offer. Of course, like, and they didn't know my story, but it was
Yeah.
like shoot, like if that's true, like what does that say about me? Um, so yeah, so I like hit it and definitely felt a lot of shame around it. But then just like finally, I think just like it finally unlocked, and I think this was something else that you hear a lot in like podcasts around people sharing their stories, where like um, things like that can be like you shouldn't feel like shame around like things that you've been through, and it's like typically what at the time feels like the worst thing that could have happened like ends up being the best thing. Um, because now looking back, and like Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots looking backwards, not looking forwards. And that's definitely been the case with my life, because at the time when I didn't get the offer, I mean, I felt like garbage. I felt like so low. But now looking back, it's like I'm still with PwC 7.5 years later. Like I've loved my time at the firm. I love the job I have now. Like I've met so many great people. I mean, all the other people who started at PwC in the Raleigh office when I did, I'm the only one still left with the firm now, in a different role now, but still with the firm. And so it's just like funny that now looking back, I'm so thankful everything turned out the way that it did. And I think rather than hiding it as like, oh, I failed because I didn't get an internship, it's like I can see how like I'm so glad everything happened the way that it did. And it's like I also feel more emboldened to like tell my story around like what seemed like your greatest failure at the time actually ends up being something down the road that you're going to be thankful for. Like you can't see it now. And of course, like when we go through tough things, it's hard. Like I'm not negating that it's difficult at the time, but like there will come a day when you will look back and you'll be really thankful for how it all turned out. So yeah, because I think there's an idea that's like things don't happen to you; they happen for you.
Hmm.
And I think I can definitely like appreciate that idea now with ending up at PwC rather than Deloitte.
That, yeah, that's so special. I appreciate you sharing that. And it is so important to remember because, landing internships and getting jobs is hard sometimes. And sometimes it seems like for everybody else, it just falls right into place. And for other people, you kind of got to fight for it more. And I think being able to keep your head up and knowing that when you put the effort in, things are going to turn out the way they need to, not just the way you want them to, it can really make a big difference on your attitude. So digging into PwC a little bit, you've been at PwC for, is it 7 years now?
Yeah, about 7.5. Yeah,
So most people don't stay at Big Four that long.
or also 6.5. Math did the wrong
Okay.
math, but yes.
Either way, you've been
Mhm.
at a Big Four significantly longer than most people. I feel like most people it's stay 2 or 3 years, make senior manager, and then go off and do whatever you're gonna do. What's been your attitude with that, and what's kind of been your journey to become a deployment consultant, and what does that look like for you compared to maybe a tax associate or a tax senior role?
Yeah, so since most people stayed 2 or 3 years, I kind of always knew I wanted to stay longer than that, just to like differentiate myself more. Because, like you said, people get promoted to senior associate, and then a lot of job opportunities open up. But so I kind of wanted to stay till manager. So after a second promotion rather than just a first. Because I think that is one of the great things about accounting is that like you can get promoted within to senior associate within 2 to 3 years, and then you can make
Yeah.
manager within another 2 to 3, because a lot of industry you can only get promoted if a spot in front of you opens up. But then in accounting, it can be often more just like if you're ready for it, they'll find a spot for it. But I kind of had heard just like through conversations with people that the exit opportunities that you would have as a manager would be better than as a senior associate, and also just like thinking too, like in the grand scheme of your career, 2 to 3 more years isn't that much time to stay a little bit longer. And I also, I mean, I enjoyed the work. Like I was working in corporate tax for PwC, just kind of like the like a lot of like typically what if you think of tax client service in a public accounting firm, like tax compliance, tax provision, that type of thing. Busy seasons, and the Raleigh office is like smaller, but I liked my coworkers, I liked my team, I enjoyed the work. So just and like I was getting like positive feedback. So it was like why leave? Like I really like it here. But then as I started to um, get close to being promoted to manager, you kind of you start thinking about not just this next level, but after that, what does it look like? Because I know something we've talked about, kind of a great thing about public accounting is like your from day one your path is very clear as far as like every promotion that you would go through, and also even what the timeline what it would be from associate all the way up to partner, and sort of even what you can expect after that. And so it's nice because because they get it's I think another idea is like it you need to have an idea about what you want your life to look like 5-10 years from now, and like is what you're doing today going to get you closer to that goal. And like if you don't like what that looks like, you need to try to change something now, because like the things your life years down the future is being determined by what you do today. And also like if you don't want to make partner, then you should look for other opportunities way beforehand, because the closer you get to it, the easier it is to kind of be like, oh, hey, I'm so close. Like, I might as well stay. I might as well stick it out. And it's nice because like you're working with people who are at these levels and have this job. So you like when you're working with a partner, you kind of get an idea for like, this is what that life is. This is what that job is. And you can get a good feel for, do I want that? And for me, the answer was no. And of course, like for people who stay, like that's awesome. Like everybody's path is different. You have to figure out what works best for you. But for me, I knew I didn't want to stay even much longer than manager. Like it was just a lot of it was the work life balance aspects, but then also, of course, like like you need to have people skills, like you need to be able to be a good leader, a team, a good team and everything like that. And I kind of was always good in those areas, but of course you do need the technical accounting knowledge if you are going to go really far in accounting. Like with tax, you need to know like the laws that are changing and like the tax code and everything. Like there are people, and this is awesome for them, like they will sit down and read like the accounting guidelines or like tax law, and they love it. Like it is truly like a joyful experience for them. And when you talk to them about it, you can hear the passion in their voice, which I'm glad that we have those people, but that was not me. And so it was like, okay, the amount of time and effort I would have to give to develop from a tax technical perspective, like I don't enjoy it enough to to do that. And I also think I know every job, like no job is perfect. Every job has aspects of it that are going to be hard, but I think we spend way too much time working to accept a job that is just like fine or just mediocre, because you're going to spend more time working than anything else you do in your life. And so I
Yeah.
think you should try to find something that lights you up and like gives you energy, gives more than it takes, and like something that doesn't, it's going to feel like work at times, but it shouldn't like always feel like work. Like I don't think you should just work for a paycheck and like live your life outside of work. But like I said, that's I feel pretty strongly about that, but I understand not everyone does, and so just kind of started thinking about what other. So it was like, okay, looking at making a change, and I think it's easier to make a change, a benefit of PwC, like 60,000 US employees, a huge company, so much opportunity. So I sort of looked at ways I could transition within the firm rather than
Hmm.
leaving the firm. So it's like I still have like all the relationship capital I've built up here. I don't have to start from scratch. Like I like when PwC had been good to me. Like I enjoyed the benefits, like the flexibility that we had with like virtual work, like post COVID and everything like that. So just looked around for different opportunities within the firm, and actually took a role in like tax technology, which was more of like product development, like much more of a technology role than an accounting role. Um, like and that was very new, very different from what I was doing before. But that actually was like not ended up not being a great fit. Um, so I did that for a year, just kind of trying it out. But then this past August in 23, switched to my current role as a deployment consultant, which is more of like an HR role, career development, like schedules, helping like staff our engagements and things like that. So it's a lot more like now, like my client is PwC, like my client is like people in our client service, helping them like stay busy and like get the type of client, if they want to work on a specific type of client or a specific type of engagement or with certain people, if people are up for promotion, like making sure they're getting stretch opportunities, like trying to balance out the workloads so that no, so you don't have some people working like 80 hours a week and some people working 20 hours a week, like trying to make that more even. Things like that are in the current role. But and I think it's great. Like I really enjoy getting to serve like the people, the client service people, and like trying to improve their careers. It's definitely it's hard to believe I've been in it for like 7 months now, just because. But I mean, it's great. Like I'm really enjoying it a lot. But yeah, that's the path I've gone to. So I definitely would encourage people, like if you are ever thinking about making a change, definitely examine what opportunities you have within your current company, because I think people are so fast to look elsewhere. But I think it's like there could be chances within your current company that you may not be aware of, but it can be like a really good fit, because you kind of still have like I said, you don't have to start over, like you're familiar with how the company works and the culture and things like that. So definitely consider like internal opportunities and external opportunities.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that in the world of accounting. It always seems like, next firm up, or industry after public accounting, or, switching from audit to working at a CAS practice. And it's so interesting to think of it from the perspective that you just shared. Kind of a follow up question. I didn't plan to ask this, but how did you market yourself for those new roles? Moving from tax to tax technology, that's a big jump. and then moving from tax technology almost into an HR role where you're helping plan and helping people develop. How were you able to market the skills you developed as a tax professional to fit those roles and be able to work there? And um, maybe include too, were you able to build any relationships at PwC that helped you land those roles as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess this is an important point. The roles that I ended up like officially switching, I had sent out a ton of applications within PwC before those came through. So when I switched from tax client service to tax technology, I had interviewed for a couple positions and applied for even more that I did not get. And then when I switched from tax technology to HR, I also had interviewed for a couple other positions and had applied for a lot more. So I think that's another great point to look at. Like even if you're making the change within your company, like don't do just one and then if it doesn't work out, like you quit and stay where you are. Like it took a lot of like there were a lot of rejected applications, and even after interviewing positions that didn't work out. So I think like you just got to keep at it. Like don't don't get disheartened and like don't stop looking for better if the first attempts don't work out. And so with the technology, so there had been different technology initiatives within PwC in client service during my time here. Like we had programs you could sort of like volunteer and apply for things. It was called like the Digital Accelerator Program, or we rolled out new tools like Alteryx and Tableau. And I had kind of always leaned into new technology initiatives like that because whenever we were making changes, all of the communications from leaders in the company were like, hey, this is the future. This is what we're going to use. So it was like, hey, if the people who run my company are saying this is good to know, I should probably lean into this and get involved in it. And so I think just being willing to like raise your hand and like embrace kind of like the cutting edge of whatever your company or industry is doing, that can open up opportunities for you down the road because that is kind of like when I made the switch into technology, even though it was very new, people were still like, oh, like that makes sense that you would try that. So it was still kind of so like there were, and since I had invested in these other technology initiatives, it was people could tell like, okay, like this isn't just like throwing darts at a wall. Like there is a connection here. Um, and then similarly, like when I switched into HR, people were once again like, oh, that makes sense because I kind of had always really enjoyed like being a senior, getting to coach associates and being a manager, getting to coach seniors and like working with interns and things like that. And like I was always involved in recruiting. So a lot of that professional development, helping people, I had made it very clear in my career that I enjoyed that. So then by getting into HR, it was once again like, oh, that makes sense that he's like working on our people. And then when I switch into the current role, there actually were like kind of serendipitous relationships where like people, like someone I interviewed with, she had been my deployment consultant when I was in um, client service, and so like we had that prior relationship and had like that history and everything like that. So that's another lesson where it's like always try to be like developing positive, friendly relationships with people because she like showed up on like the when she showed up as like one of the interviews. I was like, oh, like yeah, I know who that is, and of course, like I'm sure that helped me. That like, of course, I was a lot more comfortable in the interview because I knew who she was and we had that history. But yeah, you just never know like when the connections you make are going to come back around in the future. So I think it's just like just leaning in and like being, but also like owning your career and like if you find areas that are interesting, making it like letting your direct boss or your manager know like, hey, I'm interested in technology, like I'm interested in maybe nowadays it's AI, and just like because if people aren't going to know unless you voice it, right? Because nobody people are thinking about their own careers more than they're thinking about yours, so it's like you have to be vocal around what interests you, what paths you might want to go down, and then if people see opportunities like that, they'll think of like, oh, hey, we talked about this one time. Maybe they'd be a good person for it. Um, so yeah, just kind of the it's like the harder I work, the luckier I get. I think I forget who it was who said that, but I think it's kind of that idea.
There's a podcast that I love called The Sweaty Startup. It's hosted by Nick Huber, and his saying is always that people don't get lucky. They put themselves in a situation where opportunities fall into their lap. there's no such thing as luck. You just work so hard and work in a way so efficiently that those opportunities present themselves. And I think that's a great way to think of it, because I feel like when we think that people get, lucky, we're tending to compare ourselves to someone else who is a bump up or is somewhere where we would like to be, but we're not. And so, we got to take that view away from looking at them, and we got to look at what we can control and see that we really can control so much more than maybe what we originally thought. Um, switching gears here a little bit, the focus of what I wanted this episode to be on is the CPA exam and your expertise in that. Um, so, what do you want to unload for our listeners here? Do you want to talk about some study strategies? Do you want to talk about the services that you offer? You know, you can take this any direction you want.
Awesome. I appreciate the pulpit. So I think that the the thing I've kind of landed on with the CPA exam that I like to tell people is the constraint is the biggest obstacle. The biggest constraint is not your intelligence, and like it's not the material. Like I think anyone can pass. Like I truly believe anyone can pass it. The constraint is your time. It is specifically with particularly with as many people who are either in school full time or working full time while they're taking it. It's not that they're not smart enough to do it, and it's not that the material is so difficult that they just can't grasp it. It's that there is so much to learn while you are juggling all these other responsibilities, work, life, family, school, and you have a limited amount of time, and you also have to study for months if not years. So it's not, the phrase is like, it's not a test of intelligence, it is a test of endurance. So I think that's one of the main things that I like to tell people is like, don't think like I'm not smart enough, like I'm not a good enough test taker. It's really about, can you manage your time? Can you manage your your different priorities? Can you manage like your energy, your the just the level of like brain power you have each day? Can you make like the sacrifices today for like the long term gain, and like can you stick with it for the months or years that it's going to take? In order to reach that ultimate outcome, because when you're in school, the longest you're in a class is a semester. Like if you have a midterm or a final, the longest you have between exams is just a couple of months. With the CPA, it's so much longer. And so I think that's the biggest issue people run into, is it's like they feel like they should be moving faster, or it's like if they start to doubt themselves or things like that. That's really what sort of it's like doubt and anxiety can kill more CPA dreams than the difficulty of the material. And so it's like there's the technical side of it, learning the content itself, but then on the other side there's sort of like the mindset and the skills, and like what order do I take them in, like yeah, how do I study effectively, things like that. And then also realizing, I think the average number of attempts that it takes is like 6 or 7 in order to pass all 4 sections. So just on average everybody's going to have to retake 2 or 3 times. So that's just something else that like people need to be aware of going into it, is that it's like you are probably going to fail a section. Like on FAR, the latest pass rates were like 42%, like in the low 40s. So it's like more people fail
Wow.
it than not. So it's like you have to figure out how to deal with that. Like when it's, because of course like your people aren't getting, there aren't many exams in school where only 42% of people are passing it. So I think people don't know how to handle that. Like when you're failing sections, or like when it's difficult, when it's tough, like how do you stick with it? How do you stay motivated? How do you stay self-disciplined when it's tough? And like, so that's something I teach a lot, which we can definitely get into. But yeah, so I've really tried to lean into like the Jim Quick, who's like a learning expert, talks about like the 3 M's. It's like mindset, motivation, and methods. And that's kind of, I've like sometimes try to apply like his framework to of those 3 things, like to the CPA exams. Like those are kind of the areas. So not like tutoring people, but more just like study habits, routines, like coming up with a plan, um, things like that. Because I think, I mean, it's tough. Like I think people going for it got to appreciate the difficulty of like what they're trying to scale. Because the bar rate to become a lawyer, the pass rates are in the 60s and the 70s, depending on your state. So like every section of the CPA exam is harder than the bar exam, and you have to do 4 of them. So which it's funny. I love that statistic because I like most people do not know that the CPA exam is so much harder than the bar. Because you see in media, like in what was it in Legally Blonde, like when they're talking about like the well, I guess that was getting into law school, but just in a lot of the media, there's like people legal shows they talk about the bar all the time, but it's like where's the stuff talking about the CPA exam and how difficult it is? So just like some of the so like high level, those are some of the things I like to talk about to try to help people with those aspects of it.
I did not, I had no idea about that. There was a time where I was learning and researching a lot about the bar, and what all the attorneys and lawyers who I had talked to told me is if you fail the bar one time, just forget it. Like you're gonna be too unmotivated to try and pass again. But hearing that the CPA exam is even harder, and we have all these accountants over here taking it 2 or 3 times and getting through, that should be a testament to what we're doing in the profession and the value that we bring to our clients. We need to accounting students and professionals, we need to hold ourselves to that high standard and know that we are on another level by having to pass these difficult exams. um, so what do you offer? Do you do CPA exam coaching? Do you help students in their path? What do you offer, and kind of how did that start on top of your day job?
Yeah, so it is CPA exam coaching. So and that can be like one-on-one coaching or group coaching. What the one-on-one looks like, so helping people like come up with a study plan, like come up with the timeline of like when am I going to take the exam, and sort of working backwards to like on a week by week basis, like how much do I need to be getting done, and then helping people like stay accountable to that, because it's so easy to procrastinate, right? It's like when you had all semester to write a paper but ended up doing it a week or two beforehand. You can't do that with the CPA exam. Like you've got your test dates 2 to 3 months in the future, but you can't cram in the last 2 weeks and pass it. So breaking down the big goal into smaller goals, like keeping people accountable, checking with what's working, like what's not working, are we on track for our plan, like if not, why. And I think a big thing too, like talked about that. So since the constraint is time, figuring out how can we maximize our time and be like efficient and effective, because it's tough with the CPA exam. There's so many different resources, so many ways you could study, but it's like you have to figure out what way do you learn best. Like for me, I stopped watching the videos and only read the book and did multiple choice and flashcards, because the videos I just zoned out. But other people are the exact opposite. Like they read the book and they don't retain everything. So you have to figure out how do you learn most effectively, like the Pareto principle of like what 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. So what 20% of your time is getting most of your learning, and like do that to the exclusion of everything else. Because like when you only have a couple hours a day to study, anything that's not like it's easy to like just passively consume a video or read a book and be like, oh, I'm studying, I'm making progress. But it's like it's kind of productivity theater, where it's like, how are you actually learning the material? Can you actually apply the material on the test to get the score you need? So helping people figure out how they learn best, how they can, like I know we've talked about like the Pomodoro technique, things like that to make the most use of your time. And then with the mindset piece, it is like people dealing with like when they feel like they're falling behind and like I should be further along, or this should be easier than this, like because there's a phrase like don't should all over yourself, because there's it's like people like compare, or like comparing, like you see all the posts on LinkedIn about people like passing the CPA, getting their license, but so dealing with that, or like people where coworkers are kind of like speaking negative energy into their lives about like their ability to pass, or like if they didn't do well, if they weren't able to get their CPA, like they don't want you to get it either. So just helping people deal with like the thoughts and the beliefs that kind of hold us back, or people who think like I'm not a good test taker or things like that, because how you how you feel and like how you think drives so much of what you do and the actions you take, which drive your results. So it's so much easier to put in the work that is necessary if you have your mindset in the right place. So like I help people with that. And so people that I coach one-on-one, like they're like I in communication with them like daily, like answering questions, helping keeping them accountable, and then like having calls to really like delve deeply into issues for like, are there thoughts, beliefs, or actions that aren't helpful, and how can we solve them? And then I kind of took the best, just like the best content, the best ideas that I had, and did create like an online course that's around 3 to 4 hours long. If people prefer learning that way, that people can look at, just like, yeah, just a lot of the best ideas for like self-guided study, and it covers a lot of that same material, the mindset, the methods, the habits, and things like that. So a variety of different services and offerings there. And it was just kind of a, like I said, the 4 year path of like building up an audience and sort of building up the expertise, and then just finally saying like, hey, I bring enough value to try to create a business from doing this, because it is one of those things that it doesn't really feel like work. Like I love talking about this. Like I could talk about it all day, and it's really fun. I really enjoy it. And then PwC, like I am in my current role, I am able to have this side business in addition to my regular job, which I'm very very thankful for that opportunity. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like I really really enjoy it, and I think it's truly like career transforming and life transforming to pass the CPA. Like not just for the license and what it does for you, but like who you become along the way. Because we've talked about how a lot of the ideas that I try to teach can be applied to areas beyond the exam. So it's a similar thing. Like how you grow and how you develop as you take the exam will serve you in every facet of your life and career for moving forward indefinitely.
I love that. It's shining in your face right now how passionate you are about this and how much it means to you. And to be able to see that you get to do that with your clients and with students on a daily basis, that is so special. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'll include the link to all of your stuff and anything else, that any resources you have to your course, your website, your LinkedIn profile. I'll include that all in the link below so our students can find it. So one last question for you before we go. What's your number one piece of advice to an accounting student right now? So, like for example, I'm a junior, or maybe an earlier accounting student. What would be your top piece of advice that you would give to them?
I think it would be, you don't have to have it all figured out right now. I think just be open to new opportunities, and just be open to like working in different areas, like working on different clients. Like don't hold yourself too strict to whatever plan you have in front of you. Like I think if you can just be, I think it's like if you try to open as many doors as you can, life kind of has a way of shutting the ones that won't work and kind of guiding you toward the ways that will work. And so I think if you just sort of have that mindset of being open to like new opportunities where it's not necessarily what you thought, how you thought things would go, but like things can end up turning out even better than you expect. So I think so that would be my biggest advice moving forward, is that try new things, try figure out what you don't like just as much as what you do like. And I think when you look back, you'll be able to see like, hey, you can trace that path for how things have worked out, like for the things have worked out for the best. And even if it wasn't how you thought it would look, it's like you're very thankful for how it all turned out.
Yeah, it's funny how when you look back years later, it seems like your whole journey was kind of guided, but when you're in the right in the middle of it, it's so hard to see that. That's such sound advice. Blake, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I appreciate your advice, your input, what you're doing on LinkedIn for accounting students. It matters, and it's really special what you're doing. So I appreciate everything you're doing, and can't wait to stay in touch with you. And I'm gonna have to meet up with you when I'm getting ready to sit for my exams. So
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Yeah, this was great. It's great. Like I really enjoyed the time, and yeah, I think I'm excited for the future. Lots of good stuff going on for in the accounting world and in general. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed the conversation.
awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to check out Blake's LinkedIn and website down below, and make sure you share the episode with your fellow accounting students and your friends. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.